Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the show where a real statistics professor
and his cousin
gives you sports betting tips. I'm your host, Professor Sides. For the latest updates, information, and picks, you can follow me on Twitter at Professor Sides, and you can follow my cousin Jared on Twitter at Cousin Jared. This college football episode covers select games from Week 3 of the 2022 season. In case you're new here, I've built a mathematical model that predicts what the spread should be for every FBS college football game. That information, along with each team's power rating in a graded A, B, or C pick, either now or coming later, for every game, is available in the Google Sheet that is linked in the show's description. That doesn't mean that we recommend you do the same, as our goal in this episode is to share key information about this week's games, give you a few things to think on, and explain why certain plays are being made in order for you to come up with picks that you are comfortable with. We never recommend blindly tailing or fading any pick, but rather to hear the justifications and thought processes to make sure you're fully on board with us or against us before investing your hard-earned money. And as we go through the plays, remember that there are no locks in gambling, so it'll give you our loves, likes, and leans to indicate my confidence level with respect to scaling wagers. Cousin Jared will also be utilizing a weighted unit scale this college football season. And as always, please remember that good and bad variance will occur. So as much as we'd like to say we'll be profitable each and every week, that is an impossible reality for any gambler. Cousin Jared, I don't want to give away the storyline here, but we're talking Iowa and Nevada today, and that is, I know what people are tuning in for. I'm pumped.
Yes, it is going to be. I can't wait to break that one down. I think there's a lot of ways to make money on that game. So stick around. Later in the show, you will find out all the ways that you can profit off that one.
A lot of words and not a lot of points. That's the way we like it around
here. Yes.
All right. Well, before we get to the show, some reminders. Please hit that like button if you're on YouTube. Also, if you aren't yet, please consider subscribing or following. It's free, and the only way, assuming you turn notifications on, to ensure you don't miss any college basketball, MLB, or college football content that this channel provides. And as a reminder, we've set up a Patreon page for those of you looking to support the show. Membership starts at just $3 per month. Benefits include such things as exclusive access to the play of the day, our Discord group, both ad-free and early access to the shows, and early access to projected spreads. Let's get to the games. All lines courtesy of Bet Online. Sign up link in the show description. And current as of the time of this recording, it is late night, Tuesday, September 13th as we're recording this. We got two Friday games we're going to talk about here. 7:30 Eastern, Florida State at Louisville. Apparently, Louisville is just rocking and rolling with these Friday night games.
Yep.
Played well against UCF. My take on Louisville, and I think we're going to see a lot of variability from Louisville. Obviously, with a quarterback like that, he can really carry them. But if he's not playing well, Louisville doesn't offer a lot. So I think we're going to see some variability with Louisville. Honestly, though, I think that game says more about UCF than Louisville. I expected more from UCF, and frankly, they didn't impress me that much. I still think UCF is a solid team for what they are, which at this point is still a Group of 5 team, but I kind of expected them to be a little bit, maybe not up to par with Cincinnati, BYU, and Houston, but they're the 4th team joining that group to the Big 12, and I feel like after watching that game, I'm like, no, UCF still is a notch behind that, right?
Yeah. I definitely felt like with Gus Malzahn there, you would have thought that they would have taken a step forward. And it seems to me they're kind of very similar to when Heupel left.
Yeah. And so I think that says more about UCF than Louisville. I'm going to back Florida State here on the road as short 2.5-point favorites. It's a B-grade pick for me. Model says it should be 2.8. I just like this short of a field goal. I think the most likely outcome in this game is that Florida State wins by a field goal. I think they're the better team. Model ranks Florida State still just outside the top 25, but Louisville more of just a middle-of-the-road team. They get a lot of variability, so it's kind of hard to give anything with Louisville, I think, an A grade at this point, because even if the numbers got a lot of value, just you never really know what you're going to get with that team. And if they come out, rolling, they're going to be not a necessarily overly difficult team to beat, but not the easiest team to beat, because that sort of quarterback play can carry you. But as we saw in that first game, if he's not on the money here, on point against Florida State, I think Florida State's a solid team, and I think they can get the job done here on the road. Total of 56.5. Cousin Jared, what's your take on this Friday night game?
Yeah, I think your analysis is spot on there, because they're going to go as far as Cunningham can carry them, Louisville is. And so I look at this total of 56.5, and I haven't seen anything from either team this season that would make me think that this game would go over that number. The problem is if Cunningham catches on fire, it's one of those things where, Louisville could put up, 41 points or
Or the other way around. If he does nothing and all of a sudden he's punting and Florida State's got the ball midfield, short fields, right? It's one of those things where if he's like mediocre and like driving to the 40 and then punting, it's going to be a really low scoring game. But a little bit better, a little bit worse, and all of a sudden there could be some points, right?
Yeah. So just based off what I've seen this year, if this got to 58, this would be a number that I would consider the over at 58. But at 56, it's like, blah, it doesn't really make me feel good one way or another. But yeah, that's the thing. Like,
I haven't seen the under.
Under because I haven't
you said over. I was like, wait.
Oh, sorry. So whoa. But yeah, sorry. Yeah, if it got to 58, I would like the under. Yeah, because I haven't seen anything from these two offenses so far this year that it would impress me. But just at 56.5, Cunningham is just the type of guy that's like, you would like a little more.
You want that extra cushion.
Yeah, you want that extra cushion. Exactly.
Yep. I completely agree. The other Friday night game, Air Force and Wyoming. I personally think Wyoming is very bad at football. I know that might hurt you, cousin Jared. I know you're partial to Wyoming, but the model ranks them now 111th. I mean, that's
not good.
That's not good. That's not good. I've seen more Wyoming this year than I would have cared to see, and I have not been impressed with anything that I have seen from them. They won the game against Tulsa.
They beat Tulsa at home.
It looked ugly. They got some defensive scores and special team scores, and it was just they didn't look good at all in that game. I think Air Force is going to run all over them left and right. I'm going to lay the 15.5 with Air Force. It's a B grade pick. It's too many points to be an A grade pick. Model says 16, so I like that I'm on the right side of 17. I don't like I'm on the wrong side of 14. If I was at 14, this would be an A grade pick. But at 15.5, I still want to lay it with Air Force because I just think they're going to put up points every time they touch the ball. They should have destroyed Colorado. I mean, when you look at the box score of that one, they should have beaten Colorado by about 100-0. And Colorado got pretty lucky to not get destroyed that much. So I think Wyoming's going to need that same luck or else they're going to lose by 3 touchdowns. So I like laying it with Air Force. I'm like you, though, with the total, right? You're talking about that extra cushion, trying to play smart numbers here. If it gets to 14, I love it then. At 15.5, though, I like it. I think it's worth a look. It's just not my favorite play. Given that it's on the wrong side of the 14 and Air Force needs to win by 14. So I'll still back Air Force, though. Be great play at 15.5. Total of 46.5.
Yeah.
Can Wyoming score enough to cover this is really the question the odds makers are asking you with that total. What do you think, cousin Jared?
I think Air Force's defense is good. And so I think Wyoming's going to be in for a long night for sure. Yes, I do love the Mountain West. I think if you've watched or listened to this show for any length of time, you know that. But I also love to support the troops, even though I faded 2 of the 3 service academies last week. And so your play gets my seal of approval. Man, I like I said, love the Mountain West, but I don't see what is standing in Air Force's way of winning the Mountain Division this year. It seems to have just kind of, in my opinion, come wide open for them. So I would be shocked if we're not seeing them play for the conference championship game in December.
Yeah, you posed that question for Jake and us last week. And
last week it was a question. This week is more of like a statement.
Now it's a statement. Okay.
Yeah.
I agree. It's a conference that I feel like is taking a step back, and I feel like that also hurts you too.
It very, very much hurts me. I guess the team that other team we're hanging our hat on now is Fresno State. I guess like that's kind of the only other hope that we have.
I don't think that's I don't think that's great.
Yeah, it's not. But I think that's all we've got left at this point.
Yeah, it's sad. It used to be a much more fun conference, and like I said, taking a step back for sure. Yeah. Speaking of taking a step back, Nebraska. This is the other game I guess I should have led with. We could just talk for an hour on this one. An ode to Scott Frost. I feel like that's what we should like. We should write poetry. We've talked about him so much in the short life of this show. Back for episode 1 last year. It's a miracle he made it this long. Again, looking back at what you said last year and the going into the season and the concern and then how it went and they brought him back. And I mean, he made us a lot of money. The Georgia Southern was one straw too far, I guess.
Do you feel like anything has any coaching change has been as just like a foregone conclusion? Like it was just like we knew when the season started, like this was happening. You know what I'm saying? Honestly, I think we were all surprised it didn't happen at the end of last season. This just felt like duh, like this, we knew this was going to happen. There was
I think
absolutely nothing surprising at all.
I think Tony La Russa and with the White Sox is the other one that's in that same boat of just like.
See, I like the cross-pollination here. Yeah, I like it.
No, it's a good question. I don't know if we have. It felt inevitable. The team isn't that good.
No.
They've been going down for a while now. They got the name on the front of the jersey, but that's about all I've got going for them.
Yeah. So you start off every show by saying that good and bad variants will occur.
Not for them.
Is Scott Frost an example of only bad variants occurring?
I think so. I think so. All those close losses. And look, and to be fair to the guy, right? Like last year, I don't know how much of that bad variance. Some of that you could attribute to coaching and decision making, and there's all sorts of stuff like that, right? That maybe it was their fault, and maybe it was just some bad balances. Maybe it was a combination. We don't really know, but if nothing else, this year it just got ugly, and it wasn't about bad variance this year. It was just about not having a good team.
I feel like the first half of the Northwestern game gave everybody a little bit of false hope. Yep. And then obviously you look at what Nebraska done since then, but also what Northwestern has done since then, coming in, losing at home to Duke this last weekend. I think that
not really close either.
No.
The final score got close, but it was a blowout.
Yeah. And so I think that first half really of the Northwestern game was like completely false hope. And then obviously we saw what happened after that wheels came off.
Yeah, OU is an 11-point road favorite here. Over the summer, this was OU -3. Now it's out to 11. I've got an A-grade pick on Oklahoma. I'm not buying the hype that you fire a coach and things get magically better. I think that holds true sometimes with regards to a lot of times when you fire a coach, it's because you're underperforming. And so if you've been take more cross-pollination, you take the Phillies in baseball this year, fire their manager, they were underperforming and they played much better. I'm not sure how much of that's the manager or how much of that is just you had an underperforming team and they were going to bounce back and start playing better in a sport like baseball. You take the Angels, they fire their manager. They were underperforming. They were just not a good baseball team, and they've still been not a good baseball team. So sometimes it's like the Angels, and you got to look at, is the team actually good? And is this just bad variance, or is this just not a good team? And last year, if they'd have fired Scott Frost, over the offseason, I was very well prepared to come into this season and say, hey, that was just bad variance. They're not that bad, whatever. What we've seen this year from them, they got outplayed by Georgia Southern.
Yes.
Straight up in Lincoln, they got outplayed. And so I'm not buying any like coaches fired, players are happy, they're going to start playing better. I mean, I'm not saying that they don't cover, but I don't think that, I think that holds true when you've had bad variance, but I don't think this team is worth a darn. And I think OU's going to come in there and kick their butt. We saw last week with Oklahoma really sleptwalk through the first half and then almost covered a giant number in the second half alone before giving up. Yeah. And I think that it's just one stretch like that Oklahoma's going to have against Nebraska. Oklahoma, this game was really close last year in Norman.
23-16.
23-16?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the players, I mean, some of the players are gone, right? The players that are there remember that. The coaching staff there they all know that, right? Even if they were there or not, doesn't really matter. They know that this team hung in there last year with them. I think they're going to come out on a mission. I think Oklahoma's going to destroy them. Model says 13. I think it's 13, 14, 17 minimum. I think it might be even worse than that. I just don't see this Nebraska team hanging in there with them, especially after last year. Had last year not happened, maybe they sneak up on Oklahoma, but I don't think they're going to sneak up on them. I think Oklahoma's going to come out to play, and you saw how good that offense can be in that whatever quarter stretch. I think they put it to Nebraska. If Georgia Southern outplayed Nebraska, we don't know exactly how good OU is, but we know they're a heck of a lot better than Georgia Southern.
Yeah.
I think they wiped the floor with Nebraska. I'm laying the 11. I'm very comfortable with it. A-grade play for me. Because, Jared, what do you got?
I've got a lot of things. If you had to guess how many yards Georgia Southern had against Nebraska this past weekend, how many total yards would you think they had?
500.
642.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
I knew it was a lot. I mean, they moved the ball every time they had it, it seemed like.
Yeah. Georgia Southern, the team of which didn't really care too much about the forward pass until the past couple of years. Like, really, they were running an advanced version of the triple option, really. Yep. passed for over 400 yards against Nebraska this past weekend. A team that was almost exclusively recruited to run a very run-heavy offense, passed for over 400 yards. I have no idea how Nebraska is going to get one single stop against Oklahoma. The thing is when I'm looking at the total, I don't know how many points Nebraska is going to score either. Yeah. I definitely have way more confidence in their offense than their defense, but this whole situation with Nebraska. So I'll cut to the chase here. I'm not making a play on this game right now. I tend to agree with you. Like, I think that Nebraska could just completely blow them out of the water. Nope. And so this is one of those things. Based on that logic, I don't know if I care if this is at like 11 or like 13. Like, to me, I think it's probably the same. This is one of those things where, like, I would rather wait and just see if by some crazy happenstance it goes down to like 10.5 or 10, which I don't think it will, but we'll talk about it later. We've seen plenty of crazy line moves that we can't explain this week. So
like in Nebraska last week, I don't want to keep beating the dead horse, but I mean,
yeah. So this is one of those things where I agree with your analysis. I don't know if Nebraska gets one single defensive stop in this game. I may like to lay the points too, but for me, I don't think there's any reason to jump on it right now. I'll wait and kind of see what happens.
Okay. I'm mainly jumping on it right now because I needed the game to talk about in this show. So here we are. Also at noon Eastern, Purdue at Syracuse. This one should be an interesting game. Two teams that find themselves right on the outside of my top 25 potentially good seasons waiting, could be top 20-ish teams, could potentially have things not go their way and be middle of the pack teams here. A big game to really try to put yourself in better shape here. Purdue having to travel to Syracuse is a tough place to play, as we talk about. The travel to get out there is tough. Pick them right now. I'm going to take Purdue with a B grade pick. Model says it should be Purdue -2. I am factoring in the more difficult home environment, travel situation, whatever you want to call it, with Syracuse that has historically held true. I am factoring that into this number, and I still think Purdue should be favored. So I'm comfortable taking Purdue as a pick 'em. It's a B grade pick for me just because I never can get too confident picking against Syracuse in Syracuse, but I just think that Purdue's like a notch above them. And I know it's on the road, but I just think it's a little bit too much of a hill to climb for Syracuse. I think they're solid, but if Syracuse wins this game, then I'm fully ready to say they might sneak into the top 25. Maybe not this week, but eventually, right? I think that they could do that. But until they need to prove it to me first. Right now, I still think they're more of a 50th ranked team than a 30th ranked team. And I think Purdue is just better by enough to go on the road and get the victory. Again, model says Purdue should be favored, so I'm going to take Purdue. Basically going to pick them here with a B grade pick. Cousin Jared, what do you think?
I am also on Purdue. I think, and I'm just as guilty of this as everybody else. When we think of going to Syracuse and playing at Syracuse, we think of, the Thursday night upsets, the Friday night games where they're way closer than it should be. We think about, for example, like the Wake Forest game last year where Wake Forest went in there and only won by 3. Syracuse seems to give lots of teams scares whenever they go there. But I feel like we conveniently forget when Liberty goes to the Carrier Dome and beats Syracuse. And when Rutgers goes in there and just plays terribly and wins a game like 17-7 or something like that. So for every one of these big upsets that we think of, we tend to forget a time where Syracuse has lost at home to a team that they should probably beat. My analysis on Purdue is that O'Connell is a good quarterback, and he's also a senior, and I think he's going to have a level head. He's going to be able to go in there, and I think he's not going to make too many mistakes. I think people could get caught up in the first game of the season, Syracuse and Louisville going there, losing 31-7. Louisville had 3 turnovers in that game that really were backbreakers. I think they were all on Syracuse's side of the field. And so that game was a lot closer, I think, than it ended up looking on paper. I think that Purdue can go in there and they can eliminate the turnovers. They can play a good, solid game. And like you mentioned, they're just a notch above. Yeah. And Dino Babers, God bless him. He has his bad seasons at Syracuse, but then he has those inexplicable seasons where he'll win like 8 or 9 games somehow.
Which seems impossible to do at a truly basketball school in the middle of nowhere in New York, that why would a college kid want to go there? Like, it's a great coaching job,
Yes, exactly. But at the same time, I also trust Brian Brom to have his team ready to go. He's also a really good coach. So the combination of Purdue, great quarterback, good mature quarterback play, Brian Brom being a good coach, like you said, I think the talent level is just a step above. I think it's kind of a blessing to get Purdue to pick them here. So I'm also going to be at Purdue. I think they're just better than Syracuse.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like I said, if Syracuse wins this game, then it's Syracuse might actually be a top 30 team. But like I said, I'm going to make them prove it first. I think Syracuse does a really good job of sneaking up on teams. I think it's kind of what you were trying to say.
Yeah.
Will they sneak up on Purdue? After that Louisville game and after now, everyone kind of knows Syracuse can sneak up on you. A good coach, a senior quarterback, like you hope that doesn't happen, and you think Purdue's not going to let them sneak up on them, and then Purdue's better, and they should be able to go on there and beat them. It's not like you're the top ranked team and you think you're just going to walk in and get a victory, right? I mean,
yeah, and the other thing I would say is that Syracuse throttled UConn last weekend, but I was hoping that I was seeing signs of life from UConn after they hung around a little bit with Utah State, but then
we've seen Utah State,
lost to Weber State. I think I'm off the UConn bandwagon. Like the two people that were on it, I think we've both hopped off real quick, and so I don't think you should put much stock in Syracuse throttling UConn because I'm not sure if UConn is any better at all now.
That's
kind of another reason.
The gif of Will Smith, like looking around the room, like, well, where's everyone at, right?
Yeah, everybody's banded it.
Everyone's gone. No, I completely agree. Utah State, I'm with you. We kind of thought they might be that we knew they would take a step back, but we did not realize it would be this much back.
Yeah,
that's brutal. Speaking of Connecticut, they will not win this weekend. There are no locks in gambling because no one's going to give you a money line on this game. If so, that would be a lock that Michigan is going to win this game. 47.5 point favorites. I've got a B grade play on UConn, and here's why. I watched some of that Hawaii-Michigan game. Mm-hmm. Michigan did not have any interest in scoring late. They didn't have any interest in running up the score. They played the game that I feared that Jim Harbaugh would do, which is we're going to get to like 30 and then shut it down.
Yeah.
They did score once late, but they also let Hawaii score once late. And I'm sorry, but UConn's still a better team than Hawaii is.
Yeah. I was going to say, at the very least, they're exactly the same. At the worst, they are the same.
And I think that UConn, the life that we do see from UConn, at least I think is going to be a 60-minute effort. So I think the back door's on the table too. I don't think they're going to quit. Yeah. So I've got a B grade play on UConn here at plus 47.5. Model says 45.5. I just think that Michigan is a great team to lay. Like again, and we've talked about this a little bit. I'm mostly comfortable 9 times out of 10 blind backing the Major League Baseball model being a player-based model. The college football model, I think, is more of a guide for us. I think that Michigan is a great team to back when they're laying 17 points, 22 points, because Harbaugh wants to win by 30. But as we saw last week, I think I'm a little bit more concerned about backing Michigan as a 50-point favorite because Harbaugh wants to win by 30. He wants to get out of Dodge and stay healthy. Second week in a row now, whereas we talked about with Hawaii, nothing good can happen in this game, right? Like they're supposed to win. They should win big. They just got to stay healthy. And that doesn't mean that Michigan won't by 48, 49, 52, something like that. But I just think that UConn's going to fight enough that they should get a score or two, and that's accidentally going to get them to the cover, just like Hawaii accidentally covered. Because like I said, I still think UConn's a better team than Hawaii. So I'm going to take the 47.5 with UConn. Harbaugh just with very little incentive to run up the score. He didn't last week. I don't see why he would this week either. So I'm going to grab all those points. Be a great pick for me on the Huskies. Because Jared, what do you think?
I have nothing to say about this game. This, like you said, I honestly, I'm kind of surprised the total is this high. Like you said, Michigan, no matter, I was curious against Hawaii with McCarthy starting if the offense would open up a little bit, and maybe it did for a quarter, but like you said, just there's zero interest at all in run up score. They get to the second half, it's just like, hey, let's run clock. So, if this was like 65, it'd be like, sure, I'll take the under on that. But 60, who knows? I mean, Michigan's could score 56 themselves in this game.
The Hawaii broke that long touchdown run. If UConn breaks one, a special team score, a turnover, or something like that, a pick six, right, could jump your points up really quick. And you're like, this has been a low scoring game, but all of a sudden couple scores in a 2-minute window can break that. My last thought on this one is what I saw from Michigan. And you never know what you're going to see, right? Again, that's why I say there's no locks in gambling, people. What I saw from Michigan last week reeked of an offense that said, we don't want to show you what we're trying to do, which makes complete sense. Bama was able to go out there and kick the crap out of Utah State by just running it down their throat and, quarterback scrambles and handoff to the right and just passing it and those wide receivers just breaking it or whatever because Utah State's so bad. Michigan doesn't have quite that same athleticism. And so they're just, when they play vanilla offense, it takes them a little bit longer to score. So it's harder to cover these big numbers. That doesn't mean they don't break them. It's just, they just really reeked of an offense that said, we don't want to show anybody what we're trying to accomplish. We don't want to give anybody anything on tape. We have no need to. I would be the same way. Yeah. So I'm going to take the points. Hopefully it works out the same way it did last week. 2:00 Eastern kickoff, Ohio at Iowa State. Iowa State was favored by more than this. People have been backing Ohio. I'm not quite sure why. I've got Iowa State here, according to the model, as a 23-point favorite. So I'm going to lay the 18.5. It's an A-grade pick with Iowa State. I really was impressed with what I saw from Iowa State's offense. We're going to talk about Iowa later on, but that Iowa defense is legit. And Iowa State moved the ball fairly well on them. Maybe it's just watching, this is what I picked up in my eyeballs, that I thought Iowa State looked really good moving the ball. Like, it's a really good defense. Ohio's defense is nothing like it. You do have the potential letdown spot. I'm absolutely aware of that. That's the fear you have anytime you have a favorite coming off a game like that. But I think Iowa State is just extremely more talented than Ohio, and I think they can win by 3 touchdowns or more. Again, model says 23. The model tells me to take a lot of dogs in these type of games, and so when it takes a favorite, I'm all over it here. I'm going to lay the 18.5 with Iowa State. Ohio's ranked 112th according to the model. That type of team, I think a solid Big 12 team like Iowa State can really take care of business with. Total of 49. Cousin Jared, what is your take?
Man, so I know you mentioned that you felt like Iowa State was moving the ball well, but and I wasn't able to watch the Iowa State game, so I just kind of zipped through it later in the day, and didn't really miss much. But from that zipping through it, I don't, aside from Iowa has a terrible offense and an amazing defense. It's almost like I don't feel like I can get any feel for Iowa State from that game. What I will say, and
I don't think we can get a feel for their defense because But I mean, the Iowa defense is, and I'm not saying that Iowa State, it's not like they put up 600 yards. They didn't Georgia Southern them, right? But casually. But I felt like watching them, like, they had success in a way that I don't think most teams have success against Iowa. Like, again, relative to how good that defense is, like, they were able to pick up, 4 yards on a run, 5 yards on a run, 7 yards on a pass. It wasn't every single play, obviously, but they were able to move the ball just better than I thought. I thought Iowa State would have to punt a lot more, and they moved the ball relatively well. They missed out a touchdown because they fumbled at the goal line on a play before that had the guy's foot stayed in bounds by like an inch, would have been a touchdown, and that cost them a touchdown. They had a 4th and goal that was stopped because, again, Iowa has a great defense, but I mean, they moved the ball down there. They moved the ball inside the red zone. I think one was on a turnover. The other 2 times they moved it down 3 times early in the game and got 3 points out of it. So, I mean, they convert those, and all of a sudden they destroyed Iowa. So, and not just destroyed them, but put up a lot of points on them. So, like I said, I think we can tell something from Iowa State's offense, but I'm with you. I don't think we can tell anything about their defense because, is Iowa. What does that mean?
Yeah. So last week Ohio played Penn State, lost 46-10. The model would have Iowa State about a touchdown worse than Penn State. So if you're telling me that Ohio lost to Penn State by 36 points, 18, you're right, seems kind of like a bargain here in my opinion, especially Ohio going on the road. So the total doesn't speak to me here. I mean, yes, I would like to think, like you said, what do we know about Iowa State's defense? We know absolutely nothing.
They're probably worse than Penn State's defense. So I mean, I kind of expect Iowa State to score what Penn State scored, but then Ohio to get an extra touchdown or something.
Yeah. So I've got no feel for this game. The only thing I would hope to get from this game is that I feel like I know something about Iowa State after the game's over. Because again, but just with how terribly beautiful, like beautifully terrible. Like I don't know how to describe that game, but I just want to know something more about Iowa State because I don't feel like I know anything right now.
Yeah, I faded Ohio last week against Penn State, so I'm fading them again. Hopefully it works out as well. 3:30 Eastern, kickoff New Mexico State at Wisconsin. Wisconsin, whoa. That was a thing that you did and you shouldn't have. I don't know what else to say other than that. They've fallen to 28th in my rankings. Their offense did not look as competent. We didn't think their offense would be good, but it didn't look competent, really. Their defense also didn't look that good. It was kind of just I'm really curious, is that going to be the game we look back on at the end of the season and say, how did that happen? Or are we going to look back at that game and say that was a sign of things to come? I don't know what to make of this game yet. I feel like anything is possible with that game. At least Wisconsin now gets an easier matchup in New Mexico State. They should obviously win this one. I'm going to lay the 37 with Wisconsin. I've backed New Mexico State here the last couple of weeks, got on the cover last week with the A-grade play, but I think this is going to play out for New Mexico State more like it did against Minnesota than against UTEP. Wisconsin's going to be pissed off. Not that I don't know how easily they can run up the score given that offense, but if it's going to happen, it's going to happen against New Mexico State. I think this New Mexico State team is much improved, but the model still says the model's dropped Wisconsin out of my top 25. So it's not like it's saying Wisconsin, it thinks Wisconsin's great. Yeah. It's dissing Wisconsin and still says that, and again, I think it kind of likes New Mexico State a little more than it used to in the past, at least. It still says it should be a 40-point spread. So I'm going to lay the 37. It's a B-grade play. Total of 46. I just don't see New Mexico State scoring.
Yeah. So we've got a couple of games we're going to talk about here where I'm going to mention some team totals. I'm not good with math here, but I guess the implied team total for New Mexico State is like five and a half or something. I guess that's
probably going to. It might be. I don't know. It might be 4.5.
If the team, it's not going to get there. Like the math just isn't going to work out. But if the team total were 6, I would take the under. On New Mexico State on this one.
Well, you might get a 6.5, but you'd probably have crazy heavy juice. You'd probably have to lay minus 180 or something. Minus 200.
You mentioned the Minnesota game for New Mexico State because this is exactly what it feels like to me. That was a kind of a weird week for New Mexico State. They played on that Saturday. They turned around and went and played at Minnesota and then went and played at Minnesota on a Thursday, I believe. So that was a really tough travel situation. But if you had to ask me who was better, Minnesota's defense or Wisconsin's defense, at least before this past weekend, I probably would have said Wisconsin for sure. Jim Leonard, everybody thinks that he's one of the best coordinators in the country. So I'm going to say this about a few games this weekend. I kind of mentioned it with Temple and Rutgers when we talked about the last episode. I just don't know how New Mexico State scores. So if there's anything that I'm looking at on this game, it would be some type of team total under for them.
Yeah. Minnesota won the game 38-0 and had really nothing to prove. Wisconsin kind of does have something to prove at this point. They've got some demons to exercise. Had Wisconsin won by 20 last week, I think I'm on the other side, and I'm taking New Mexico State with Wisconsin playing Ohio State next weekend, a look-ahead spot. Don't care, get everybody out healthy, don't show them anything. But I think losing last week, I think it changes things. And it's not so much that it changes the players as much as I think it changes the coaches, what they want to do, what they're working on in practice. I mean, it's not so much a human motivation, trying factor, as much as it's just the practice is going to be a little more intense this week. The game plan is going to be a little more intense this week. It's things are just different. And I think that really affects things. So like I said, I had Wisconsin won by 20 against Washington State like they should have, then I think this is one where maybe New Mexico State just needs one touchdown and they cover type thing. But as it is, I think that defense I feel like is going to come out to prove a point, and I don't see New Mexico State scoring, and I feel like another 38-0 type game, 42-0 type game makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, building up their confidence, I think, is one thing you're kind of working around there. Is after a game like that, you need something to kind of build up your confidence. So.
Yeah, going into Ohio State, you want to be confident. You don't. You don't want, and obviously they can win this and have confidence and not cover. If they win 35-0, they're going to feel fine, right? But you don't want to win 24-0 and be like, oh, we could have beat them by more. You want to feel like it took care of business.
Yep.
5 p.m. Eastern kickoff, Liberty at Wake Forest. The model says Wake Forest minus 12.
Oh, man.
That seems low. That seems low.
Yeah. It does seem low.
It seems low. I don't know what else to say other than that. Wake Forest looked pretty dang good last week. How much of that's Vanderbilt? And as we talked about before with Vanderbilt, how much of that was Hawaii? We're getting to that point. Yeah. I think this game is a perfect explanation of what I talked about with early on in the season. The model is going to maybe help us do a good job, and maybe not in every game, maybe in like 8 out of 10 games, kind of figure out all the chaotic. This team played this team and looked good against this team and whatever. Wake looked good against Vandy. Vandy looked good against Hawaii, but how much of that means what? I don't necessarily know. Model only says Wake Forest minus 12. It says that Liberty's a solid team, middle of the pack in college football. The Wake Forest is about 40th. There's just a lot of questions on Wake Forest. There's still a lot of questions on their defense. Can Liberty hang in this game and not get embarrassed? The model seems to think so. I'm going to give it a B grade pick at plus 16.5. I'd really prefer 17. But, I mean, I'm just asking Liberty to lose by 2 touchdowns here. Yeah. The fear with this pick is the good news about this pick is Wake Forest can allow points to anybody. Liberty, in theory, has the offensive horses, in theory, to score those points on that Wake Forest defense, match them almost score for score, and lose by 10. In a game that they were never really in, but, hang in there. The bad side of this pick is Wake Forest has the offense to score every time they touch the ball. Yeah. That's the downside of this pick. And that's why even at 17, this wouldn't be an A-grade pick because Wake Forest could score every time they touch the ball. So I'm going to trust – this is a true trust the model pick. It's trusting that the chaotic web that we are weaving of teams playing each other, that Wake Forest isn't maybe as good as they're perceived to be, and they have some real weaknesses. So I'm going to grab the points with Liberty, but it's not my most confident play, only B grade. Cousin Jared, what are you thinking?
I am thinking that I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull the trigger here against Liberty. I just don't know if I have enough faith in Liberty. But
who beat UAB?
Who beat UAB, but UAB had a lot of turnovers in that game. That was more self-inflicted wounds from UAB's part than Liberty necessarily. Definitely Liberty still won the game, so kudos to that.
We all were on UAB.
I just can't believe that Hartman basically didn't do anything for like 2 months and just came out and acted like he didn't miss a beat at all. And so where I'm going with this is I think that the Wake Forest overs are going to be the place to be for the foreseeable future. 63.5, like that's not really a good number, like 63, 62, 61, 63.5 is just kind of a yucky number. So like, I don't know if it's this week against Liberty, but I think as Wake Forest gets into conference play and plays some potentially better offenses, I don't know what the cap's going to be on these totals, but it could be like last year. They could have ridiculously high numbers and it may not matter.
And just still go over.
Yeah, just still go over.
Like old school Big 12.
Yeah, it's just like Hartman's going to get to practice now. Like, I mean, can you imagine what it's going to be like when he practices?
I don't know. It didn't seem like it mattered.
No, it didn't.
Of course, that was also Vanderbilt. How much of that's Vanderbilt? How much of that's Hawaii? I don't know.
That's true. I guess where I'm going with this is if I see one more week of what I saw last week with Wake Forest offense, then it's just kind of like blind over from now on.
Well, Liberty has a not terrible defense. So I think that's kind of the question here is that their defense isn't so bad that I'm like Wake Forest will score every time they touch the ball. Yeah. Their defense isn't good enough for me to think they can get a lot of stops. It's kind of in between that, like not really good, but not really terrible either. And so it'll be an interesting test. If Wake Forest has to punt 4 or 5 times, that's a little bit different of a story. But if Wake Forest goes out there and, the only time they don't score is, at the end of the half, that sort of thing, then I'm with you. I think it'll be an interesting test because, like I said, Liberty's defense not up to par with most of the ACC's defenses, but they're probably better than Vanderbilt's.
Yeah.
So whatever that's worth, right?
Yeah.
5 o'clock Eastern, Marshall and Bowling Green. Look, full disclosure, we talked about Cal and Notre Dame already. I've got Marshall like 25 spots ahead of Cal. So Marshall's a better team than Cal. So
wow.
There you go. What a world we live in, right?
Yeah.
Laying 16.5 on the road at Bowling Green. Again, I've got Marshall ranked about 50th. Bowling Green's in the bottom 10. Welcome to the bottom 10 Bowling Green. I think Marshall kicks the crap out of them. You do have a potential letdown spot. That is, of course, the big thing here. But The reason that I'm still comfortable laying the points, number one, a model says should be 20. So I'm on the right side of 17. Model thinks 20, 21, 17, 24 are the most likely outcomes. We win all those. Mm-hmm. Number two, obviously Marshall winning that game was not expected. And part of why they won the game was turnovers. Part of why they won that game is they're a really solid football team. I mean, they're not that much worse than Notre Dame is. And even though we have a potential letdown spot, I just think Marshall's just a much better team than Bowling Green. So as long as that coach has them ready to play and they just didn't party all week, which maybe they did. I don't know if you've got insider information, share with the crowd. But otherwise, they're just a much better football team than Bowling Green. So I think I'd be more worried about a letdown spot if they weren't that good. But I think relative to the types of teams they're playing here, again, what I've got them as the 51st best team in college football, they're not a bad team. Right, and I think teams that are of this caliber go into bottom 10 teams and they kick the crap out of them. I don't see Bowling Green scoring very many points. There's a reason this total is 50. I'd be looking at team total under for Bowling Green. I just think that Marshall defense is nasty. I don't think Bowling Green scores. I think Marshall wins by 20. A-grade play for me, laying 16.5. I like being on this side of 17. Cousin Jared, what do you
got? This is a game that I'm watching for a couple of reasons. Number one, Marshall at 16.5 is a little appealing. The other thing I would say is 51. You're on the low side of a bunch of key numbers there: 51, 52, 55, 58. Last week, Bowling Green lost to Eastern Kentucky 59-57 in 7 overtimes.
Yeah, we talked about that on the Discord. I was like, wait, does anyone realize that we're on the sixth overtime of this game?
Yeah.
There's a reason why Bowling Green's in the bottom 10 because of that game is part of it.
Yeah. And their first game at UCLA, they lost 45-17. They actually got out to a lead in that game, and UCLA
really was asleep for the first quarter.
Yeah, and then they kind of got rolling and put up 45 points. You say that Marshall's defense is really good. I can't argue with that. I would also say that I think Bowling Green's defense may not be very good either, and so this is one of those things where, Marshall could score 45 points in this game, and it wouldn't surprise me. So I don't know. This is one of those stick around on Twitter episodes later in the week. Maybe I talk myself into a play here, but 51 seems a little low to me, just based on how Bowling Green's defense has played the last 6 quarters of football.
Yeah, my take on that would be if I was going to go over, I'd go Marshall team total over. But again, I think Marshall's going to win by lots. So my plays there should be correlated. But I think I think Marshall can put up a lot of points. I don't think Bowling Green scores that many. I think Marshall wins easily.
Okay.
So 7 p.m. Eastern, Charlotte at Georgia State. Okay. So Charlotte's quarterback is Brian Reynolds.
Yep.
Brian Reynolds. Brian Reynolds?
No, that's the actor.
Chris Reynolds. No, Brian Reynolds. But Brian Reynolds is baseball player. Yeah, Chris Reynolds, I think he is.
Can't tell you the Major League Baseball player, but I can tell you the quarterback for Charlotte. So yes,
there you go. He's good. He's a full touchdown to their team, maybe more now that we're on the third string quarterback. Good. The backup is not good, but better than the third stringer. I've watched way too much Charlotte football this year.
Yeah.
Both Reynolds and the backup, and I don't remember the backup's name, were ruled out mid to late last week, which gives me hope that they're playing, that at least one of them can play this week. We don't know yet. I haven't heard anything yet. I'm making this play on Charlotte, hoping that one of those guys plays. If Reynolds plays, I love getting 19 with Charlotte. If he's announced to play, this number should move under 17. Who knows if he will? I'm just reading the tea leaves of, because they were announced out later in the week, it gives a possibility of them playing this week. But it's something to check on. I'm locking in a B grade play on Charlotte plus 19 for a couple of reasons today. Number one, if that news comes out, I'm not going to be able to get 19. because like I said, Reynolds is so key to that offense.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, even without those guys, they were 1 touchdown away from a push against Maryland last week. As bad as Charlotte is,
Mm-hmm.
so is Georgia State, who's also not very good enough to win by that many points. Obviously they can, but it's a lot of points. So I'm going to grab the 19. If neither one of those guys plays, it's not my favorite play, but I think Charlotte can cover it. And if we get any injury news help, we've got a really good number. So I'm just kind of playing a little bit of, if it goes one way, it's really good for me. If it goes the other way, I still think we have a fighting chance just because I don't think Georgia State's very good. I debated a lot about this. I almost made this a C grade play, but I was just, again, if Reynolds comes back, this number is going to drop probably to like 13.5 is where I think it should drop. And so I don't think there's going to be any value in it at that point. So I'm going to grab the 19, cross my fingers. And like I said, if neither one of those guys plays, I'm going to hope that third string quarterback now finally getting reps.
Yeah.
Georgia State's a whole lot worse than Maryland, and they can at least not get destroyed by a very bad Georgia State team.
Yeah.
Because what do you got for us on this one?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody is going to believe that we don't talk about these before we discuss them here. But all of the things that you said are completely applicable. Reynolds being so important to that team. The market's not out yet, but let me tell you the thing I'm taking a long, hard look at is the the Charlotte team total under, based on the current line, what that would be about 21 or so. I would feel really good about taking Charlotte under 21 in this spot, especially if Reynolds doesn't play. So it's one of those things where, like, when the market opens up for the team totals, I would almost just like blindly play it and kind of say what you said. If except the opposite way, if Reynolds
you're going the other way, you're hoping he doesn't play. Yeah.
If he doesn't play, then I feel great about that. And the reason I say that is because Georgia State has played South Carolina and North Carolina, and they gave up 35 points to South Carolina, but there was a special teams touchdown or a defensive touchdown in that game. They didn't give up 35 points to South Carolina. They picked off Spencer Rattler a couple times, which, at this point, who hasn't picked off Spencer Rattler a couple of times? And they also only gave up 35 points to North Carolina, which is actually pretty impressive, I think. So even if Reynolds is back, I think that this Charlotte offense may have some tough sledding against this Georgia State defense. So kind of the same logic that you had, but just another angle on it. I'm almost thinking if Reynolds is not playing or is not playing at 100%, I think the Charlotte team total here might be a good play.
Yeah, and that's the other thing to consider, right? If he plays, will he be at 100%? We don't know what the coaches are thinking, and unless you have the inside information, which neither one of us have, are they looking at the dire situation there, and is there a potential of rushing him back? Who really knows how that all plays out, right? Yep. If he's 100%, it's a very different story than if he's not. It's just a very different story than if it's still the third stringer or the second stringer. Like I said, the backup was at least better than the third guy, but extra reps help. Like I said, I'm just gonna hope that they can hang in there, whether it's high scoring or low scoring, and that Georgia State's at least worse than Maryland, so they'll at least feel better about that. Moving on, 7:00 Eastern, and Tennessee and Akron. We got some games this weekend. Akron bad, Tennessee probably good. The model still likes Tennessee, still ranks them number 7. I don't know with Tennessee. Like, what a weird performance that was against Pitt. They covered.
They did.
Not in the way that we expected. That was some good variance. Talking about good and bad variance. We had some bad variance with the Baylor game, but we had some good variance with the Tennessee game because I don't really feel like we should have covered that, or I should have covered that one. Laying the 6 points. They're obviously much better than Akron, and they're going to win by a lot. Model says they should win by 44.5. I'm going to grab the 47 with Akron. I'm grabbing the 47 with Akron mainly because I think about that first game that Tennessee played against Ball State, and they didn't really outplay them. They didn't really look that good against Pittsburgh for half of that game. If they don't get the same turnover luck, the same fourth down, we got to gamble and go for fourth down to their own 35 type luck. I think they beat Akron handily, but I think they beat them by like 42 or 38 or something and not 50. So it's just so many points. Last year we broke these games into segments. We had a little fun thing. And I feel like if we had this, we could have had a whole segment this week on that's a lot of points. That's a lot of points,
Yes.
Tennessee's going to win by a lot. They are a much better team. Akron, I have ranked 127th. So, I mean, they are very, very, very bad. But I don't know. Ball State's very, very, very bad too. And again, Ball State, if the same game played out with just a couple of different random luck things, the pick six not happening on the first play of the game, that sort of stuff, Ball State's down by 14 at the half and well on the way to a cover. And so also, does Tennessee have an incentive to run it up? I'm going to hope not. They kind of did against Ball State, but hopefully they don't now that we're in the middle of the season. It's just so many points. Only a C grade play, though. Not one I can be very confident because Akron is terrible. But just out of principle, I'm taking all the points with a lean. Cousin Jared, what do you got?
What's the implied team total for Akron here? Is it like 13.5 or something? I'm not good with the maths here. I don't.
10.
10? That's it?
Yeah.
Still, like the under. Akron's not going to score. Akron is not going to score in this game. Akron's offense, very, very, very bad. Akron, Tennessee plays so fast. Anything could happen. But I just don't think Akron's going to score. I would be shocked if they got. I would be surprised if they got a touchdown. Maybe they get like 2 field goals or something to get 6 points. I would be shocked if they get a touchdown. So this is another instance where I'm looking at the team total because I don't think Akron is it on offense this season. And unless Tennessee has a turnover in their own territory, in field goal range already, again, I just don't see how Akron scores. I feel very strongly that Akron is not going to score very many points this week.
Even with Ball State getting 5 yards per play against Tennessee, putting up 350 yards.
I think Akron is just
that much worse.
I think Akron is very not good.
Yeah.
That is my take on it.
I agree. Tennessee scored 59 against Ball State. A handful of those points were literally gifted to them, and Akron may gift them some points too. Tennessee also plays Florida next week. I just don't think they have an incentive to run it up. I feel like I feel like this is a game where they're up probably. I'm going to guess 31-0 at the half, probably 38-0 right in the third quarter, and then I think it's like 38-0 with 25 minutes to go in the game. Tennessee gets one more touchdown, that sort of thing, but there's just no incentive to run it up, and they might. I don't know, but Tennessee plays fast, but they only got 59 off Ball State, and Ball State gifted them a ton of those points. So
no, that's true.
But I'm with you. Akron may not score.
I don't know. Maybe if you are thinking about a Tennessee look ahead spot, then I think you could look at the total on the game, the under 67, definitely. Because like you said, Tennessee's got nothing to prove at that point. No reason to keep the horses in late.
49-3. I mean, if that's the final score of this game, I think we'd all be like, that seems right. Like they kicked the crap out of them. They still cover the 47, and it goes well under the 67, and Akron team total under hit. So, I mean, I feel like that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. I'm just really going to see play just because Akron, like we said, is so bad that I just don't want to be that invested in Akron. But I think they're worth a look at this many points, and I think it's a potential look ahead spot for Tennessee, really.
Yeah, man. Akron's only 127th. Yeah,
it's bad.
They're on the doorstep of
They're on the doorstep of that bottom trio or whatever that we talked about. Yeah, they're right there.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Also, bad football. 7 p.m. Eastern. Arkansas State versus Memphis. Arkansas State ranked outside the top 100. Memphis now in the bottom half of teams. They're a 14-point favorite at home. I'm going to grab the 14 with Arkansas State. I like getting the 14. It's only a C grade pick. For my model says 13. I don't really have a great feel for this game other than I'm getting 2 touchdowns in a game that I just don't know how good Memphis is. And so, again, model says 13. I'm going to trust the model and grab the 14, but it's not my favorite play. It's not a huge edge. Not really much else to say about it. Cousin Jared, what do you got?
Usually when the model is this spot on with something. I say that's a good number. I have no thoughts on this game. Well, I'm not personally making a play on this game, but I would definitely be taking the points with Arkansas State. We covered easily with Memphis last week against Navy. I think Navy's really bad, but just
absolutely, yeah. We covered Navy, how bad they were when was it Delaware? Who'd they lose to the week before?
Delaware, yeah. But outside of that win, which I don't think means much, I just haven't seen a ton from Memphis the past couple of seasons. And not that they're bad, but just they
mediocre.
Yeah, they're mediocre. They have good games, they have bad games, and they don't, when they were rolling there for a few years, they were putting teams away and it wasn't even close. And the past couple of years, they just haven't been putting teams away.
There was talk on the heels of that, of them being a team that would be joining the Big 12 potentially.
Yeah, they
were at that caliber of the Cincinnati's, Houston, BYU. They were in, maybe not quite UCF, Cincinnati caliber, but they were in that. And then now, like you said, they've really fallen a rung below that.
Yeah. So the model says this is spot on, but for me to go back to our baseball term, I think you take the points or pass on this one, just because we've had a few years in Memphis now where they're just not putting teams away. And Arkansas State coming off of loss to Ohio State, it's going to be like, when you're out there swinging the baseball bat and you've got the weighted donut on it, you take the weight off, you're like, wow, this is light. Yeah, this is light. So I think it's take the points or pass on this game.
Yeah, and I agree. It's a good point that you make, that there are so many situations in this where Memphis just lets Arkansas State hang around, and you don't want to have laid 14 points in that scenario. Obviously, there's scenarios where Memphis gets out and runs away with it, right? But there's so many scenarios where they let Arkansas State hang around that if you laid 14, it would just be frustrating and just not worth the investment.
Exactly.
7:30 Eastern kickoff, South Florida and Florida. Taking another dog here, grabbing the 24.5 with South Florida. Model likes this edge, thinks it should be 21.5. I've zigzagged with Florida. Done that with a couple teams so far. I backed Florida against Utah, won that one, then faded them last week. I think they got a little bit too much credit for that Utah win. We were all kind of on Kentucky. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just the model. We all loved Kentucky in that one. And I think this is just too many points. I think Florida's going to win. I just think 24 and the hook, I think is too much. So it's a B grade pick for me. Grabbing all these points. Model has South Florida ranked 103rd, so it's not that South Florida is good, but Florida still isn't there yet, in my opinion. I think the future's potentially pretty bright. Obviously, they've got him a good coach. They got him a quarterback that has some real potential, but as we saw last week, a quarterback that can give the game away as well. And it's a situation where if he's not completely on and makes a few mistakes and or doesn't really have the need to run all over him like crazy because it's a blowout, Florida could easily win this game by 14, 17, 21, 24, something like that. Like a lot of ways we could win this one. So again, model still thinks that Florida, not a bad team, but still outside the top 30. This is way too many points for me. Favored by the home edge in the heat, not going to be a big deal because both these teams are used to the swamp-like conditions in Florida. It is a night game, but obviously the crowd probably not going to be quite as fired up after playing Utah and Kentucky the first two games. You feel like this is not really a spot that they're going to be as rabid for. Give me the 24 in the hook with South Florida. I think they can not get embarrassed, and that's all we need to get a victory here. B grade play for me. Cousin Jed, what do you think?
If there is a team that I feel like I'm sure we could probably sit here and list a lot of them, but I feel like there's a lot of variance with Florida so far this year, or going forward this year. I think their defense looked really good against Kentucky. I think their Anthony Richardson looked amazing in the game against Utah. Not so much in the game against Kentucky. However, South Florida is not Kentucky's defense at all. But then, against Utah, maybe the Florida defense had times where it didn't look as hot. I guess where I'm going with all this is that I've seen many good things from Florida this year, and I've seen some questionable things from Florida this year. And so this makes me think that this game, Florida's either going to win by like 31 or it's going to be like a 10-point game in the fourth quarter. I would be surprised if they lost, but at the same time, like if they won this game by 10 points, I wouldn't be shocked either. So that kind of, keeps me away from this game. I just want to stay away. I do have to say though, I feel like I called that Kentucky game perfectly. And like, if I could just,
I talked about that in the episode 1 of this week. I gave you props for that.
Yes. And thank you. And I really just want to say, if I could just make a living off Duke unders and Kentucky unders, I think that we would be having a really good season here. And somehow I was on Kentucky correctly last year, and I was on Kentucky again this year. I don't know what the deal is with me and Kentucky and Duke. If this was the college basketball podcast, Jake would love me if I were just nailing all the Kentucky and the Duke games. Unfortunately, this is football, and the viewership doesn't quite translate. But that's okay.
No. Okay, quick game for you. Florida has played Utah. They've played Kentucky. They have this game. Real letdown spot after Kentucky, given that they play, as we talked about, Tennessee next week. Okay?
Yeah, it's trap, definitely.
Trap game. Without looking for fun, who does Florida play the week after? I'll give you credit if you're within 500 miles.
If I'm within 500 miles of who Florida is playing in 3 weeks?
No, 2 weeks. Yeah, after Tennessee, because it's a brutal schedule for Florida to get Utah, then Kentucky, and then Tennessee is 3 of the first 4 games.
Yeah, and if I'm within 500 miles, oh my God, I have no idea. I'm going to go with Northern Arizona. I don't know.
I don't think you would win that one. Eastern Washington.
Darn. Yeah, that's definitely way more than 500 miles.
Kind of a random one to travel all the way to Florida.
Yes, it is, but a good payday. As Appalachian State would tell you, those $1.5 million games can turn out well.
They really can.
Yeah.
All right, 7:30 Eastern kickoff. The game you have been waiting for: Nevada and Iowa. A total of 39. And Iowa's favored by 23 in this game. Can Iowa score 23 points? I don't think they can. I'm going to take all 23 points with Nevada. Model says that this game should be Iowa minus 21. Folks, Nevada's not good. Obviously, I feel fortunate that we had 2 A-grade plays on them in the first 2 weeks and covered both of them.
Yeah. You're going to look back at the end of the season and be like, how did we have 2 A-grade wins on Nevada?
Yeah, exactly. Like the great good variance, at least in the first one. The second one, like I said, I think they probably went either way. That looked worse than it should have been because of the turnover luck. I'm not sure Nevada scores much. I'm not sure Iowa scores much. Honestly, I'm not sure why this total's 39. I cannot believe I'm saying that about a college football game. But Cousin Jared, can you talk me in? Is it possible to be talking to an over in this game? I feel like you have to look under. You have to look under 39. You have to look first half under, team total unders. I'm thinking just take every under in this one, because who's gonna score? You remember that Nevada has the biggest issue with Nevada is their offense, not their defense. Right, their defense is actually competent, and Iowa can't score against a competent defense. Yeah, I mean, this feels like a 13-0 Iowa win. Well, talk me out of 13-0 Iowa.
So the Iowa beat writer for the Athletic seems fairly convinced that there will be a new quarterback out there for Iowa this week. Which, okay. Let's make all the Iowa jokes. Okay. Will it really matter who the quarterback is? No,
it might. I tweeted about this in the middle of that game. They were like, there won't be a quarterback change. And I was like, as an Iowa State backer, that is the words I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. It does matter.
Their current starting quarterback, his QBR for the season is 3.
It should be negative.
Okay. On a scale of,
I know 100. It goes to 0. It should be negative. It should be negative.
It's 3. And second is 29 or something like that. He's so bad. So even if this new guy comes in, and who apparently Iowa has, I don't know when it was. This guy's thrown more touchdown passes than the starter has in the last however many games, and he started one of those games. And so because he's thrown 2 and the starter has thrown 1. So if this guy comes in and his QBR is, I don't know, let's just say a whopping 35. Yeah. Let's go way high.
35. That's crazy talk.
Yeah. Iowa could put up, 20 points or something. So what I'm saying is
crazy talk. Iowa scoring 20.
Yeah. So
poor Mitch. Shout out Mitch if you're listening to this.
Yeah. I want everything. I told myself at the beginning of the week, I was going to let this line settle. I don't know if it'll be Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. I don't know when it'll be, but I want the lines to settle. Especially I want the team totals to be out. And like you said, I think you could play just about an under any way you slice it.
80 which way you want.
Nevada is not going to score I don't know. It's a team total worth 3.5. I would take the under on their team total. If like Iowa, like
the implied team total right now would be probably 7.5 if I had to base off of this.
I'm
with you. I'd go under.
I would take the under.
They might get 3, they might get 6, they might get 7, but 10 seems that Iowa defense is salty, man. They're good.
Yeah. So and like I don't know what Iowa's team total would be, but maybe you could get an under there at a decent number. Like there's just any way you cut
30?
it.
It'd be 30 or something, which just seems way too high for Iowa.
Yeah, and so this is one of those things where I just want it to settle. I want the team total markets to come open, and then I'll kind of make a decision on what I want. But I literally think you could play under almost any way in this game and feel good about it.
I think, and this is weird because I feel like I can't. I mean, I would have recommended this on Iowa State. We kind of talked about it a little bit. I'm going to be a little more explicit about this week. I kind of think take both team total unders, take the first half under, take the full game under. You're probably winning 3 of those 4. And you might lose 1, but you're probably winning 3 of the 4, and you're probably going to profit off of it because I just don't see how it gets that. You're going to have a bunch of winners in that. Would be my thought. I'm like you. I think, or pick out whichever ones you want. That's fine too. I think there's a lot of unders you can play on this one. I agree with everything you said there. I'm going to grab the 23 points. It's only a B grade play specifically because there is that question mark about the quarterback. That's the thing.
I got so caught up in my unders. Like, is Iowa going to score 23 points? Like, I also love taking the points with Nevada here.
I don't think they will. That's why I said I'm grabbing the points. I think it's too many.
Yeah, and so like you can talk me into taking the points too.
Yeah, just in case that Iowa quarterback is a 40 quarterback rating or a 45, which still average is 50, so it'd still be below average, right?
Yeah.
That defense is going to create short fields, and it's going to create situations where they don't have to move the ball very much to score. Yeah. I still think 23 is too many points, and I still think I'd take all those team total unders and game unders because I think what's going to happen is Iowa, I think if they have a more competent offense in short fields, it's going to get 2 first downs and have to kick field goals. I think they're going to field goal Nevada to death. This could be a game like if you said this game landed 21-0 and it was 7 Iowa field goals, I'd be like, their MVP of the first game was the punter. Like, would it be crazy for the MVP of this game to be the field goal kicker because he kicked 7 field goals because their offense can move it enough to get to field goal range, but they can't move enough to score a touchdown? Like, or if it was whatever, 19-0 with 4 field goals, like, 22-0 with, it's very possible, I feel like, for something weird like that. So I would still take the unders, but like I said, only a B grade play with Nevada for at least for right now, just because if that quarterback is more competent, I don't want to be over invested. I don't want this to be 21-0 at the half and me feel like, oh my gosh, Iowa has a decent quarterback and that's all they needed to unlock themselves and they were just stubborn.
Right.
But in general, I'm like you. I think there's too many points. I'm not sure Iowa scores 23 by themselves. I'm not sure how much anybody scores. A lot, like we said, a lot of ways to make money on this game. It's going to be really ugly. If you have like a sick football fetish, watch this game. Otherwise, you probably don't want to watch it. It's going to be really bad. But a lot of ways that we think you could profit off of this game.
Well, we kind of talked about this before we started recording. But if you're listening to this show, you probably have a sick football fetish anyway, and so this is probably right up your alley.
It's what or you just love the timestamps and you're just like, I want to ignore half of these games and just give me the information on this one game. So you're probably like, yes, the timestamps are a lifesaver.
Yeah.
7:30 Eastern kickoff, UCF and Florida Atlantic. I already talked about UCF. I think they're a massive disappointment. Issue is Florida Atlantic, I think, is garbage. And so I think UCF can go on the road and get the job done. I'm laying 9. It's only a C grade pick. I like that it's on the south side of 10. But I don't like that it's north of 7. If I could get 6, I'd be a little more excited about this. 6.5, maybe 5.5 for sure. 7, I'd be okay with. At 9, I'd rather back the, UCF.
Right.
But they're so meh going on the road. I feel like they could win this game by 6 or 7, and I would be like, yeah, that kind of figures. I mean, they just were so unimpressive, really. What I've seen of them, I thought they were going to take a step forward. They haven't yet. Maybe they will, but they just haven't yet. So I'm laying it with them just because, again, I think Florida Atlantic really isn't that good. I think Florida Atlantic's got that nice 2-1 record, but I think it's really a mirage based off who they've played. Model says 9. I'm going to lay 9 with UCF, but only a C grade pick. Again, I need this to get to 7 before I'm getting really interested in this one. What do you think, Cousin Jared?
I have nothing useful to say about this game.
Yeah. That was a quick one. 8 p.m. Eastern, UTSA and Texas. Obviously, Ewers is out for this game. That matters. Model says Texas minus 17. Of note, the model is kind of taking an averaged approach here with the quarterback situation. So if yours was in this game and I was laying 12.5, it'd for sure be an A-grade play. We wouldn't be able to lay 12.5 if he was playing, because clearly he's a whole lot better than every other quarterback Texas has. You obviously saw a clear drop-off to Hudson Card, who showed a lot of heart in that game, playing on one leg for most of the second half and scrambled for a couple of nice long runs. And you could tell he was clearly on a plane. So a lot of heart, but the passing ability is still not his strong suit, which is not a good thing for the quarterback position. Good news for him, UTSA is only mediocre. So I'm going to lay the 12.5 with Texas. Only a B grade play. But I like that's on the right side at 13 and 14. I just think we saw enough from Texas this last weekend. And like I talked about picking them, they have enough athletes. And maybe they finally have a coach who can actually figure out how to utilize the athletes, which has been their problem for so long. But they have the athletes. They have the talent. I think they can roll the ball out there, and they should be able to walk all over UTSA. They should be able to minimize the weaknesses at the quarterback position and win this game handily. Only a B-grade pick, though, because we are still dealing with a quarterback that I don't trust. So I think it's a solid number at 12.5. At 14, it's really just a pass or a C-grade play at that point, because at that point I think it's very possible Texas wins by 13 or 14. But being on the right side of both of those numbers, I think Texas is good enough at home to win this game. We just got to make sure that they don't sleepwalk through it. And that's obviously been a problem at Texas in years past. But you know what else has been a problem of Texas in years past is having talent, not doing anything with it. And we saw that narrative broken last weekend. Even last weekend, once Ewers was out, they still played decently well against an Alabama team that, like, let's all tap the brakes. I mean, obviously out was a disappointment for Alabama, but they're still one of the top 3 teams in the country. Yeah. And that Texas team, even without Ewers, still looked decent against them. And so I think that's what we're dealing with here, that still tells us that this Texas team is still good enough to be a very mediocre UTSA team at home by double digits. 12.5 is a solid number, so B-grade play for me. Again, not an A-grade play just because that quarterback situation has me a tiny bit worried, but I still think it's a good number to lay it with Texas. Because, Jared, what do you think?
I don't want to say anything that will lead you to your response here, so I'm just going to ask you first. What's your thought on the total of this game?
Under. Way too high. I don't trust Texas offense to score 40 points. And I think Texas is going to win because I think they can hold UTSA down to 17 points. And then I think they can win, 31-17 or something. That's only getting to 48.
I think my thoughts on this is going to be the third big game in a row for UTSA. Went to overtime the first 2 games of the season, maybe some tired legs. This is a huge game for UTSA. I mean, absolutely huge game, but I just don't know what they have. I just don't know what they have left in the tank. And it would be very hard to replicate the same effort that Texas gave against Alabama, obviously. But if they gave anything close to that,
half, 2/3, whatever.
UTSA is not going to be able to do anything on offense. And you mentioned Ewers being out, Card starting. I think that definitely brings the ceiling down a notch. Obviously, Bijan Robinson is still an amazing running back, but that brings down the ceiling.
But UTSA, kind of what I was saying is UTSA is the type of team that they should be able to utilize Bijan Robinson's strengths and mask Hudson Card's weaknesses, because he should be able to have a field day against what's just a mediocre defense.
So I'm like you. I think this is too high. The under seems appealing to me. I think this total has gone up. I want to say it was in the upper 50s, and it has gone up to 61.5, which I'm surprised. We know that Ewers is not playing. I'm not sure why this total keeps going up. Since it's been going up, I think I would wait and see if I could get it like 62 and play the under at that number. But the only lean I have I think Texas should win. Big letdown spot though. But just with what I saw from the Texas defense against Alabama and UTSA, I don't know what they have left in the tank after those 2 overtime games, 2 just absolutely exhausting games. It would not surprise me if UTSA scored like 10 points in this game, and this game ended up being like 42-10 or something like that. So total's gone up. I'll keep waiting on to see if it goes up further, but the under definitely has caught my eye.
Yeah, a little bit of a trap game possibility for Texas. I mean, that's full disclosure, playing Texas Tech next weekend, coming off the Alabama game. That's the big, again, part of why it's just a B pick. But in general, it's like Kelly talked about, like, they don't have to have their A game here. They need their, C+ game, and their defense should really hold UTSA down. And they should just be able to out-physical them on the offensive line. They should just be able to hand it off, between various running backs 65 times and amass 400 yards of rushing offense. They should have that physical ability. So, again, trap game is the caveat here, but there's just a massive talent discrepancy between these two teams. 8 p.m. Eastern, Louisiana Tech at Clemson. Clemson, still potentially having some offensive issues. Didn't look great against FCS opponent last weekend.
Yeah.
I still have them 5th in the model. That's partially because I've got Michigan 4th, and beyond Clemson, I mean, I got Tennessee 7th. Like, who are you putting up there, right? I mean, once you get past those top 3, it's a big question mark, right? So Clemson's still up there. Obviously, their defense is fantastic. I'm surprised that the implied team total here for Louisiana Tech would be, 9-ish. I feel like it should be like 6.5. So, I mean, if you could get a team total under 10.5 for Louisiana Tech, I would love that. I don't think that's going to appear. But a lot of points for Louisiana Tech. Model says it should be 33. I'm going to grab 34, and I'm actually not that concerned about if I could grab a 35. The reason why is 35 only matters. 2-point conversions aside, which shouldn't happen in this game, only matters if you're scoring nothing but touchdowns. And do we trust Clemson to score nothing but touchdowns, or do we trust they're going to move the ball in Louisiana Tech because Louisiana Tech isn't a good team? But do we trust that they aren't going to stall out and have to kick a couple field goals? I mean, 34, I think, is just about as good as 35 in this situation because Clemson's strength is their defense, not their offense. If their strength was the offense, I'd be saying the other way around. I'd be saying they're going to put up nothing but 7s, and we've got to make sure we get 35. But I'm not sure they put up 7s just because that offense is such a concern. I'm going to go up to 34 with Louisiana Tech. They are very bad. It's a B grade play. Total of 52. Just bottom line is I'm just not sure Clemson can score. I think Louisiana Tech's got to get one score and they can cover this game. I'm not sold on Clemson scoring 40 points. So Louisiana Tech just got to get really 6 or 7 is all I'm asking them to do, and I think they cover this. So I just don't have faith in Clemson doing what they should offensively yet. Maybe they will, but I have not been impressed with that offense. They had it kind of going a little bit at the end of last season, at least relatively speaking, but it feels like we're back to where we were at the start of last season with Clemson.
Clemson beat Furman last week by 23. Beat them by 23 points, 35-12.
And Louisiana Tech's not good, but they're probably better than Furman, right?
So the total on this game opened at about 55.5. It was on the right side of 55 for an under, and it has since gone down to 52. So here's kind of how I break this game down. I think Louisiana Tech, obviously, they're going to have problems scoring against Clemson.
For sure.
But Sonny Cumbie plays fast, and I think there's the potential for there to be a lot of 3-and-outs from Louisiana Tech. So that means I think that Clemson could hold on to the ball for quite a long time in this game. I think that's probably still good for the under. The longer
because they're not going to score fast. Yeah,
they're not going to. They may not score at all. They may kick a lot of short field goals.
How did they only score 34 on Furman? I feel like maybe we should just go back to that. Like we need to do a full film breakdown of how that's even possible with a team that's consensus top 10.
Man, I don't know what I'm going to do on this game, but even at 52, I think the under is very, very enticing because this, you could easily convince me this game ends up being 35-7 or 38.
I was just thinking
something like that.
35-3.
I think Louisiana Tech's going to, have a lot of 3-and-outs or a lot of short drives anyway. But if Clemson having the ball, what have we seen from Clemson having the ball the last year and a half that makes us think they're going to do anything with it on offense, even if Louisiana Tech has a questionable defense? So
it's not like, and of course now old school, I'm thinking old school Baylor or current school Bama, right? Where these teams could just score so fast. You saw what Bama did against Utah State in that week 1, where Utah State went 3-and-out, Bama got the ball, and they have so much speed that it was just like, boom, touchdown.
Yeah.
Clemson's not doing that. I mean, they you feel like they should. You feel like they've got the talent, but they just can't do it. And so Bama has that quick strike ability against bad teams to score in one play sometimes or 4 plays, whatever. And Clemson used to, but yeah, Clemson, like you said, like if they have the ball a lot, it's going to mean a 14-play touchdown drive and a 10-play field goal drive and some punts just because they can't do it offensively. They couldn't do it against Furman. Now at some point they're going to have a week where everything just clicks, right?
Right.
It's just one of those things where at this point I'm going to bank against it not happening until I see it consistently. Like it might be this game, but it might not. It's unlikely to be because it was more likely to be the Furman game if it was going to happen, right?
Right. Yeah. So this is going on my list of follow-ups. But this is a game I'm gonna be watching. We talked about it with UTSA, Texas total. We talked about Nevada and Iowa. I want the team totals to come out. We talked about a couple other games team totals. This is one that I'm watching too. So watch the shows later in the week. Watch Twitter and everything. Might be something pop up on this under later this week.
All righty, that brings us to the Kill the Clock offense segment where we look back to games we've already talked about. A few weird line movements. For the first time on this show, I have something to talk about here. All of my extra plays have been on Twitter, that have been closer to game day, on game day, based off of movements that I thought were absolutely ridiculous. And most of the time that's been right, but it's been later on in the week. We got some early ones this week. So I got 3 that I'm going to add a unit to. We already talked about in the first episodes. If you want to hear our breakdowns for those, go back to them. But North Texas is now at 3.5. I'm going to add a unit to that one. Earlier on in the week, we had North Texas, and I had 2.5 on them. I don't know why we're getting 3.5 now. I think if you have to add to that too, you're going to be just as confused. We're very confused at this game. We don't know what's happening. Maybe the whole UNT team has mono and we don't know it yet. But I can't believe I'm getting 3.5. I still have money line on this one. That gets me my 3rd unit on that game. So I'm maxing out there on this one at 3.5. It's a fantastic number in my opinion. Also money line, a great play. I'm also adding an extra unit to Ole Miss against Georgia Tech. I talked about this one on the first show. I was laying 14.5 and I was saying it's an A grade pick. I'm going to add a 3rd unit. It just matters. I was seeing what the number would do. I said, if it comes down, great. If not, I'm okay laying a slightly higher number. It's up to 16.5. I'm going to grab that 3rd unit now before it gets to 17, as we're now approaching a key number on the other side. So I already love 14.5. Already had 2 units on that, adding one at 16.5. I still think 16.5 is an A grade play. Just get it before it goes to 17 or 17.5. And then I already had 2 units on Texas Tech plus 9.5. I said that seemed more like a touchdown game, more of a 6-point game, 7-point game. It's up to 10. I'm going to add my 3rd unit to 10. Having that push protection there is really nice. So I've got 3 1-unit adds to games I already had 2 units on from the first episode. Because Jared, what are your additional plays?
Okay, everybody, buckle up. Got a few things here. So you tried to talk me into a couple of sides and totals. Well, lucky for you that all of your hopes and dreams have come to fruition on these games. And so one game that it didn't register with me, but as we talked about it, I realized what I was saying to myself. So I had 4.5.
It happens sometimes.
I took the 4.5 with BYU on the road against Oregon. I also learned as I was talking through it, why is that total 58? That seems like a lot of points for 2 teams with good defenses and offenses that can be a little bit up and down, I think. And so I am grabbing also the under 58 in the BYU and Oregon game. And I also really like that because it's currently minus 105 odds. We know that 58 is such a key number, but I'm usually say maybe wait for 58.5. I would be shocked if it got to 58.5, but the minus 105 odds kind of take some of the sting off of that.
And again, a BYU defense that I can't say enough good things. As a Baylor fan watching that game, the way they looked getting the pressure, forcing and I kind of insulted the Baylor coaching staff a little bit. I didn't mean it as harsh as it might have sounded. It was more about they just decided that wasn't the way they wanted to play the game. And I think part of it was the BYU front 4 just getting after a Baylor offensive line that has like 1,000 returning starts from previous years, right? A very good Baylor offensive line. BYU front 4 just got it done and looked really good defensively. And Baylor had a couple drives where they looked good, but really forced Baylor out of their game plan. And like you said, a really good defense at BYU. I mean, I can't give them enough credit. It's why they're a top 25 team, partially. So I second what you said there. I agree with that.
Yeah, so BYU, Oregon, under 58. The other one, you tried to talk me into it. You said that 48.5 would be the number, but I figured, you know what, let's give the people what they want. I am playing the under 48. It was at 47.5, went up to 48. Playing the under 48 in Penn State and Auburn. Just don't see how there's going to be very many points scored in that game. Yeah, and then the other one that we also talked about, I already played the under 62.5 in the Kansas-Houston game. And you talk about, does the whole North Texas team have mono? What has happened to the total in the Kansas-Houston game? It has gone down from 62.5, which I had on Sunday night. It has gone down to 55.5. It's gone down by an entire touchdown.
And a hook.
I have no idea what's going on there. But luckily for me, Kansas has now gone up to 10. It was at 9.5. Now Kansas is getting 10 points. So the model and I will officially be going mano-a-mano, I think, for the first time this season. So the model will be laying 9.5 with Houston. I will be taking the 10 points with Kansas there.
There is one way that we can win and push. Otherwise, someone will lose.
Yes. So, I mean, let's be honest. I'm sure you twisted viewer probably want to see one of us lose. So those are all the games so far where I am playing a side in the total. I've got a couple of double downs here. So we talked about the North Texas UNLV total. I had that under 58.5. Maybe I just called this one wrong. Literally, I said on this show that I don't see how this game gets into the 60s. Well, apparently a lot of people think the game's getting to the 60s because it's gone up to 62.5 from 58.5.
I don't know what is happening.
At this point, so the SMU North Texas game didn't even get to this total. Are you telling me that UNLV, which I will fully admit that their offense has improved, but are you telling me that they're the same level offense as like an SMU? Because every other team that North Texas has played, every other team that North Texas has played for the past year, from the second half of last season on, about the same talent level as UNLV. Their defense has given up nothing close to that. Yep. And so
SMU is a different animal than the teams that UNT in this run has looked good. They've looked good against Conference USA teams, which is important to keep in mind because that's the type of team they're playing here in UNLV. Yes. They're not playing SMU. I mean,
yes.
Like I said, if we named one the confusing line of the week, I mean, for me, last week, right, I had several that I thought was confusing, right? Like Georgia Southern being one of them, of course. But this one is less about that I'm confused about one of the others, which is like the combination is like, I don't know what people are thinking. Like the team total for UNLV is to me like a hard under. Like that team total is now up to like, what, 35 or something ridiculous, or the applied team total? What? I'm so confused.
Yeah. So I'm doubling down on the under there.
They're going to score like 60 by themselves, and I'm just going to laugh.
Probably so. But, well, okay, let me finish all this, and I have comment on that. So let's go adding a second unit to the under 62.5. I really like that. And then Michigan State. I think the professor was already maxed out here. I have no idea what's going on this line. Michigan State is up to plus 3.5. The model has this Michigan State should be favored by about 6. So are we talking about 10 point? Yeah, 5. So we're talking about 8.5 point edge around, obviously, the
crossing a meaningless number at 0, but crossing 2 really key numbers and taking the 2 most key numbers at 3. This is
So this may be a situation where somebody knows something that we don't know, but I am taking the extra unit and putting it on the plus 3.5 for Michigan State.
And we got a lot of new viewers here, so hopefully they're still around at the hour 26 mark. But as we get later into the season, we're going to have some of these really big edges because I'm not adjusting the model for anything. I'm just letting it run its thing. And when we get to the injury stuff, it's going to get weird where we have a guy who's played half the season and we have to kind of like manually adjust. Right. Later on in the season, we're going to have some weird edges and we're all going to be like, no, it's an injury thing. Like it's mainly quarterback or the whole, it's like the whole offensive line maybe, or a quarterback. It's really all it is. Like otherwise injuries are way overblown, half a point, maybe a point, we're going to have some of those, but this early in the season, I'm like, what does someone know that we don't know? Like, I don't.
Washington's offenses look competent. That's the only thing I can figure out, but that's not 8 points difference.
It's not. It's like, it's no different than we talked about last week with Mississippi State, Arizona, where I said the model had Mississippi State by 17.5. And I was like, maybe the model's missing by Arizona by a little bit, but that means it should still be 14-15. Like they aren't missing by 9 points or something stupid like that.
Right.
It's the same sort of thing. Maybe Washington's a little bit better in the model things. Maybe it should only be Michigan State minus 2.5 instead of minus 5. But why are you getting more than a field goal makes 0 sense to me.
Yeah. And I know we talked about Michigan State money line. And if you want to do that, that's fine. For me, this is one of those things where just crossing 3, like I'm going to take the 3.5. Like, money line play still great, but I'm going to take the 3.5 points on that one. So you mentioned something that kind of got me thinking, like we saw things that are confused us. I mean, not to get too far ahead of us on the entire long season, but this could be like a make or break week, for how we do on the season, where we have these big edges and we're doubling down. We've got some A plays at some big numbers. It could be the make or break for the season when we're disagreeing with the book so much. Because I think as the season goes on, usually the model and the books kind of, you mentioned injuries aside,
injuries aside, they tend to converge.
Yeah, they tend to get sharper as the season goes on, and so I think you're going to see less value. But this week is going to be big.
Although, and I don't know what to make of it necessarily, but I've tweeted about this a little bit. The absolute error that the model has had for weeks, the first 2 weeks of real games, weeks 1 and 2, has been better than any week last year. And usually it starts off higher and it takes a while before it gets going, really, because there's just more uncertainty early on. And we're looking at previous year's production, whatever, but the model's been spot on. The books have been even better too, have been well too. So it's like, everything's been a little bit better so far. And I don't know what to make of that. But in years past, it's usually been one of those that the error for the model is usually 13, 14 points a game, and then 12, 13, and then 11, 12 by the end of the season. It's already at 11 now. Yeah. So it's already hitting things really well. But I don't know about this week. I mean, the model disagreed with a lot last week on the big edges, like Mississippi State, like Georgia Southern. There were a handful of them, and most of those went our way, which is why I was able to have such a profitable week. Same thing's happening this week. And like I mentioned, I think it's weeks 2 through whatever 6 are going to be the make and break weeks, where there's going to be a lot of big differences. And if things go our way, this is the time where it'll really shine, because it's picked out things that the books haven't. But then as the years goes on, we're going to have to start we have to be hunting for Easter eggs, trying to find our really good edges.
Yeah. And the bad news for the professor here, because he doesn't know that I'm about to say this, just wait until I literally try to break his brain with playing a double down on a total on the North Texas game. And then I want to add a unit to North Texas at plus 3.5 at some point later in the week. I will break everything that he has created. So I'm going to hold off on that for now.
I mean, the whole thing, trying to keep up with all this on the sheet already is complicated enough. So whatever. It is what it is, right? We'll figure it out.
That's all I got.
All right. Well, that is all then we've got for you. Any last parting words, Cousin Jared?
Nope. Stick around. A new episode tomorrow with our friend Jake.
Yep. We'll have we'll finish up all the games. So we'll cover, if we haven't covered it in episode 1 or this episode, it is coming on the next episode in 24 short hours. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Picks with the Professor. A reminder to check out the Google Sheet for model pick projections and results. You can find that link and more at the website. Reminder, that is www.pickswiththeprofessor.com. If you haven't done so yet, please click that subscribe button to ensure all the sports betting content we provide on this channel is dropped right into your feed. See you again for that 3rd episode with our friend Jake. And until then, as always, best of luck. And remember, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.